Okay. I haven't done this one in a while.
I think the actors are 6 years. You shall. I think that's the Jewish people as a whole. The seventh, you shall let it rest.
You know, I don't remember how to do it, and I don't want to kick everybody out by accident. So let's read it together. All right. So the first source says, 6 years shall you sow your land and gather in its yield, but in the seventh you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave let the wild beasts eat. You shall do the same with your vineyards and your olive groves. 6 days shall you do your work, but on the seventh day you shall cease from labor, in order that your ox and your ass may rest, and that your bondsman and the stranger may be refreshed. So who are the actors? Who are the players in this version of Shemitah? And feel free to unmute yourself and share. Who's involved? Who's on the stage of Shemitah here? Or I'll put it this way, who's not? Who's not mentioned? This isn't a hard question. Jonathan, what do you got?
Well, on the stage are God, the lawgiver, and Moshe, the law transmitter, individual Jews and the Jewish people, and the recipients of weekly and cycle sabbatical consideration and generosity. Not present are any authorities among the Jews. There's no elders, there's no priests.
Actually,
thank you. Now, did you say at the beginning that Moshe and God are actors here?
I mean, that's who's telling us this, right?
That's who's telling us, right? That's true. That's who's telling it. But in the actual depiction of it, I'm always struck, maybe I'm foreshadowing. Oh, sorry, Lori, go ahead.
I just want to disagree briefly with you. It's the interesting thing about this bit is to whom it's addressed, and it's addressed to landowners. It's people who have power, men who have power, basically. And it's the admonition is the assumption is that you have land and that you have bonds. You have servants or slaves, and you have some control over the media.
Good.
Authority, you're male.
It might be something like that, but I would. Girl could be right. I would just interpret it this.
Good. So
I've already said it said for us from which country it's a problem in most.
It's a little like
I'm gonna let you discuss amongst yourselves because my audio is not great, but and it's hard for me to hear, and I think actually it'd be more fruitful if I let you do it without my intervention. Right. So I think talk amongst yourselves, and we'll come back together in a moment.
So Lori's insight that this seems to be dedicated to people who have land, have planting, have relationship with them, have family members, have recipients. It's a little bit like the early United States Constitution.
Yes.
Landowner, male, white, and everybody else is not an actor but an actor of part. And of course, President Obama tells us more perfect union means we keep including more people in the process and participants throughout American history. And Rabbi Berman would say throughout Jewish history. Right? He used to teach that visions in the Talmud like Mibnei Darkei Shalom, Mishum Eva, many other exploding provisions in the Talmud are designed to expand our moral awareness and our legal obligation over the course of the centuries.
One of the other interesting things about this sorry, but I've written a lot about this one, is that the land is another.
All right, let's bring it back together.
Right, the land is a party.
The land is another, like a servant.
Shemitah,
the land is
in the book of Shemot, Parshat Mishpatim. Who's involved in Shemitah? Who's Shemitah for? What? Who are the players in Shemitah? Landowners, right? Very focused on the landowners. What are their responsibilities?
Not work the land.
Don't work the land, right? What else?
Share.
So another player might be the needy are players also, right? We have to. We're thinking about the needy. We want to make the land accessible so the needy can come in and take from it. Good. What else? Animals. Right? Maybe nature. Right? So don't work the land. Kind of let things lie fallow. Let things regenerate. Let animals. It's connected with Shabbat, right? Which is about letting animals rest. So there's something about people with power, and Lori was saying this online. People with power kind of stepping back and not exerting their power as much and allowing weaker people, animals, creatures to benefit and rest. Good. What else? Anything else in this? What would it look like if we applied that? If we legislated Shemitah based on that text, what would Shemitah look like? What kind of Shemitah would it be?
If there isn't anything cultivated, what's there for the people to gather? Right.
Great question. And we're going to get, that's a huge question with Shemitah, right? Which is, well, hold on a second. If we're not going to work the land, how are people going to eat? Right? We got to feed the people. So that's going to be a year after. Right, that year and the year after, we're going to set agriculture back. So this is going to be a big problem that the rabbis are going to deal with, and we'll explore that different approaches to that.
We're talking about different things that just grow. Not fruit trees. That just happen,
right?
Berries, perennials, but like you're not going to get crops. You're not going to get wheat.
You're not going to get
barley. You're not
right.
Gonna get
Yep. Yeah, it's going to set that back. It's going to set your agriculture production back. Yes, Joey.
So I was wondering, is the Shemitah the Shabbat for the land or for the animals? Because it says that on the seventh day you should cease from labor in order that your ox and your ass may rest.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little. I put them both together. They follow each other. It's a great question. The Shemitah it's part of the cycles, right? I wanted to show you how there's the 7 days and the 7 years, and they're all connected to rest. The ox not working the animals, that's both on the 7th day, but also it's going to be for the whole year because you work your animals to work the land. Right? The point of working an ox or an ass is to plow and to do things. And in the 7th year, you're not going to be doing that. So your animals are going to have a big vacation year. Now you might ride them around for other things. It's not you're going to let them completely free. You don't let them free reign. It's not the same as a field. Like it's not that animals are completely fallow where you can't touch them at all, but you're not going to be working them like you wouldn't work them on Shabbat. So they're connected. Yeah.
Why does the Torah also specifically say, repeat itself with vineyards and olive grape groves? Why does it repeat that?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that be included?
Yeah. Why did it specifically mention that again?
That's a good question. So it could be because you might have thought that, okay, I think I know why. And we can look at this in Chazal. I think the reason why is because there might be difference between fields, right, which are like wheat and things which require a certain level of maintenance versus olive groves or orchards, which are going to produce automatically. So the reason why is to tell us that you can't do any agriculture work, both on, like heavily cultivated agriculture and also just trees. Now, we're going to see you can take fruit from trees. You can eat the olives. You can eat the pears. You can go and get the benefit from the fruits, but you just can't do a lot of work. You can't prune. You can't dig, plant, all that stuff.
And you can't sell them.
What would Shemitah look like if this was, if this version was created? What would Shemitah be for us?
Well, today or other day. I mean, it depends what percentage of the population is farmers. It'd be very different when most people are farming and when most people are not farming. Right? Today, not that many people are actually farmers. So.
Right. So in an agricultural society, be transformational, very radical. In a world today, it might not be so foundationally transformational.
We all have to eat.
I have a question.
Jewish owned or non-Jewish owned.
Right. That also. Right. Who is this land? And I think let's go. I want to keep moving. Let's look at the next source. This is going to really focus. We're going to have two different aspects of Shemitah brought clearly into focus that maybe weren't in the first one. Very much about the land and one or two other things as well. This one's longer, so try to get through it. This is in Bahar, a longer expression of Shemitah, maybe a little more expansive, and see what you come up with. Take it away. I'll mute this so you guys don't hear our talking, and someone online, if you can choose to read it for everybody and to discuss, that would be great. It's a chunky one, so get into it.
What's your question?
First, we have to read the longer passage from Bahar about Shemitah out loud.
We could read it to ourselves and think about it.
Chavrusa, you should always do should come through your body and your mouth. It shouldn't come through your eyes.
Go through it. Preach, Jonathan.
My iPad doesn't get the text. It's not a laptop or desktop, so I can't see it. I can only hear it, which is the old-fashioned way.
Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you, please.
And the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, speak and say, when you enter the land I assign to you, the land shall observe a Sabbath of the Lord. 6 years you may sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. But in the 7th year the land shall have a Sabbath of complete rest, a Sabbath of the Lord. And you shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your untrimmed vines. It should be a year of complete rest for the land. But you may eat whatever the land during its Sabbath year will produce. You, your male and female slaves, the hired and bound laborers who live with you, and your cattle and the beasts in your land may eat all its yield. You shall count off 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years. So the period of 7 weeks of years gives you a total of 49 years. You shall sound the horn loud in the 7th month on the 10th day of the month, the day of atonement. You shall have the horn sounded throughout your land, and you shall hallow the 50th year. You shall proclaim release throughout the land for its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you shall return to his holdings, and each of you shall return to his family. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. You shall neither sow, nor shall you reap the aftergrowth, or harvest the untrimmed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You may only eat the growth direct from the field. In this year of jubilee, each of you shall return to his holding. When you sell property to your neighbor or buy any from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. In buying from your neighbor, you shall deduct only the number of years since the Jubilee. And in selling to you, he shall only charge you for the remaining crop years. The more such years, the higher the price you pay. The fewer such years, the lower the price. For what he is selling you is a number of harvests. Do not wrong one another, but fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. You shall observe my laws and faithfully keep my rules, and may live upon the land in security. The land shall yield its fruit, and you shall eat and fill, and you shall live on it in security. And you should ask, what are we to eat in the 7th year, if we may neither sow nor gather in our crops? I will ordain my blessing for you in the 6th year. So you shall yield a crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow in this 8th year, you'll still be eating the old grain of that crop. You'll be eating the old
2 more minutes
year until the crops come in. But the land must not be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine. You are the strangers resident with me. Throughout the land that you hold, you must provide for the redemption of the land.
So the key verse in the long passage, which Floyd just beautifully read, and I would say one of the handful of key verses in the whole Torah, is Ki li kol haaretz. The reason behind, the logic behind Shemitah is, it's not our land, it's not our food, they're not our animals, they're not our servants. Everything, including all of us, is God's. A couple of other quick observations. Shemitah begins on Rosh Hashanah, but Yovel begins on Yom Kippur, with the respective dates of the shofar blowing. There's also extensive discussion of pages of Talmud that I've read learned over the decades about selling produce.
The land must not be sold beyond you are but strangers.
So far, the 2 passages we read,
That's one of the lessons. Very important.
You can't own it, you can't plant it, but it doesn't say, so far that I've seen, you're not allowed to
all right
traffic in it, but that becomes a big issue in the Talmud.
Let's come back together. So the first source, I think actually we sort of skipped over a little bit how crazy of a first source the first source is. How almost, like insane what the Torah is saying for the first one. You're speaking to an agricultural society and you're telling them 1 year out of 7 years, you can't work the land. That's a huge deal, right? That totally undermines everything. Imagine if I said to everyone here, 1 year out of 7 years, you can't work a job. You can't make an income, right? I mean, it sounds great. Sounds kind of cool. What's a sabbatical? Right. But how many of us take year-long sabbaticals? Who gets sabbaticals? And who here has taken a year-long sabbatical? Anybody? Right? We don't do that.
Yes.
It sounds really nice, but our society doesn't really allow for it. Like, that's not something that you have to fund it yourself, right? If you're very wealthy, you can do it. But it's, I mean, look, Halavai, it'd be great if all of us got a year off every 7 years, but We don't work, the society doesn't work that way. Most societies don't work that way. Agriculture doesn't work that way, right? You don't take a year off of farming. It's professors get sabbatical. Right, they got to work a little bit. Sometimes rabbis get sabbaticals, but it's like, you know, I hear like I got a 1 month sabbatical. You know? It's like it's shrinking and shrinking. So it's a huge thing to say. And also, not only that, imagine if I said to you, you have to take a sabbatical and you have to like give your money to just other people, right? Like whoever wants your money can come and take your money. And you just have, everyone has to do that for everybody. I mean, that's a wild idea, right? It's very, there's a part of me that's really compelled by that idea. I mean, it's almost a utopian idea. We're all just going to share. We're not going to work. We're going to share what we have, and we're going to just live like that for a year. We're going to try that out. It sounds really amazing. It's a crazy idea, just like Shabbat is a crazy idea, right? The idea that now it's kind of normal. We have the weekend, right? That's sort of a regular idea, but especially in the ancient world, the idea that every single person gets one day where they get to rest was like, what? You don't do that? Like slaves work, people work. You don't just stop working. If someone tells you to work, you work. And then the Torah said, no, you're going to take a day off. So these are big, big ideas. And I just want to hit that home. And then now we're going to get more of the big idea in Parshat Bahar. The big idea in the first piece, we could call the first one like communist Shemitah or socialist Shemitah, right? Or utopian Shemitah. It's very economic, right? Socialist, right? Everyone shares, everyone has something for everybody. It's not really about God, right? It's really just about like people and food and poor people and rich people. It's in the first, it didn't mention God. God wasn't mentioned in contrast with this one. And land, right? We're at land, but land is money, right? Land in the Torah, in an agricultural economy, land is your primary source of it's the economic engine, right? There's not money, currency, options, stocks, all that stuff. Like everything is really tied up in land and the land producing. So it's very economic. It's very justice oriented, people, poverty, etc. As opposed to, or maybe not. And Bahar adds a different twist, right? The second pasuk, Shav Ta'aretz Shabbat Lashem. It's for God, right? It's not so focused on the poor here. The poor are certainly going to benefit, but the purpose of Shemitah in Bahar, very God focused, a lot of God talk, right? It's a Shabbat for God, right? You're going to rest for God. It's really focused. There's a new focus here on a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? And even the last sentence, very important, right? Verse 23. The land must not be sold beyond claim, for the land is mine. You are but strangers resident with me, right? I, God, own the land. Shemitah is reminding you that I own the land. It's much more about our relationship with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Bahar. It has all the other stuff. Don't work the land, right? Let people eat. Everyone gets to eat. But it's not so much focused on the social aspect. I think it's much more the spiritual aspect of Shemitah. That's what I would suggest right now. What do you guys think? What did you notice? What stuck out? Who are the players? What was similar to the first text? What was different?
There are a lot more technicalities in this one.
Yes, it spelled it out more, like how to actually do it. The first was kind of vague. Don't work the field. Well, what does that mean? Just like with Shabbat. Shabbat's very vague. Rest on Shabbat. Well, what does that mean? I rest like in the hot tub. I feel relaxed. And then I should go in the hot tub all of Shabbat? Like, no, there's actually, we need a specific amount of things. So here it gets more specific on what the rest is and what you should and shouldn't do. Good. What else?
Something else struck us was used the term Shabbat Shabbaton in the fourth verse.
Yeah.
That immediately in my mind made me think of Yom Kippur.
Poor.
And to what sense is Shemitah like an atonement for social ills or social wrongs that have been done over the 6-year period? Yeah. And then Ben was saying in Yirmiyahu, he's like criticizing the people for the Shemitah years that they missed. So it sort of brought up that whole Yom Kippur.
Atonement, reconnecting with God, right? We've kind of gotten distant from God. The Shemitah year is going to fix that somehow. We're going to repair our relationship with Hashem in the Shemitah year. Good. What else?
Well, the Yovel is added, of course.
Yovel, right? Another even crazier idea. If you thought Shemitah was crazy, Yovel's way crazier. Right. You're going to have 1 year where you can't work the field, and then we're going to do that 7 times. And on the 7th time of that, what are we going to do? We're going to free all the slaves. We are going to, debts were actually every 7 years, right? Which is also very cool. We'll get to that.
The land is going to return.
The land is going to return, right? So, remember, let's think about what happened, right? we went into Eretz Israel, and every tribe got an allotment, right? People didn't go in and speculate and buy land, right? Moshe was like, okay, you know, if you're from Yehuda, you're going to go here. And if you're from Binyamin, you're going to go here. Everyone got their little, everyone was, you know, given a portion of land. And then what happens? Then there's economic activity. Some people have a good crop. They have some extra money. This person's having a hard time. Oh, I'll buy your land, right? And I'll expand. And you have land acquisitions, right? It's like a fixed amount of land. But in that land, some people, you know, lose some of their land. Some people gain some land. And that's a normal economic activity, which is fine. But then every 50 years, it all resets, right? So everything goes back to normal. So again, imagine, you know, you bought a house, right? You bought your neighbor's house. They wanted to downsize, right? They wanted to sell, you know, to get a condo, and they had a big house, and you bought their big house. Then, you know, let's say you bought that in year 45. 5 years later, you've got to give back your house to your old neighbor, and you don't get money for it, right? You don't get, it's not you, they don't buy it back from you, you just give it back to them, right? Very kind of crazy.
Into the pricing, as it says right in here.
What's that?
The price will reflect that. Because it says you buy the number of years left until the next.
Right. So right. So when you make the deal,
if it's 5 years going, I'm only going to pay you for
yes.
5 years.
Yes. Right. So the price is affected into it. But yeah, okay, but you're still giving it back. And it also means, right? It means there's no, you can't.
It's not a surprise.
Well, I mean, what does that do? Like, let's just play that out for a second. Not ever, by the way, not clear Yovel ever happened. Pretty clear Shemitah happened. Not clear this Yovel, which is, it's very, I mean, very radical. Like, what would that mean? Think about if we applied that to like today's society. What would it mean if we had a 50-year reset, everything go back?
It would mean everyone would be equal to where they were. Everything would be equal.
Well, not permanently, right? Will be interesting, right? Yeah. You had 50 years where things could kind of grow and become unequal, right? And that's not bad. Torah doesn't say everything should equal all the time. Torah says like 50 years kind of let things economically play out the way they will. Some people are going to win, some people are going to lose, some people are going to grow, some people are going to shrink. But then after 50 years, it's like in the forest, you know, they do like controlled burns, right? We're just like going to burn it all and start it over. And then things will start to grow again. Controlled burn, controlled economic burn.
Like, how does it go back? I mean, there's new people being born or coming into the country, or how does it go back? Like, go back to what?
So like familial holdings. It was by family. Family, you know, was very, it's even like this now a little bit. Actually, you see this in some of the Palestinian villages. There'll be a village and it's like 2 families, 10,000 people. And everyone's a member of one of 2 families. And it's like very clear, like you either belong to that family, that family. So I think it was a similar thing. Like if there wasn't a lot of immigration. It wasn't like thousands of people were coming into Israel, and you know, maybe there was one convert here, one person there, but you kind of knew who was who. This was like a more ancient tribal way of living, and everyone belonged to a family, and every family had like a certain place. And people remembered when this family bought that family's, you know, farm or whatever. And every 50 years, the idea is it would just revert back. And yeah, even if your family grew, you just have to figure it out. I guess you just have to squeeze together a little more.
What happened to the slaves? Because were they freed and then there were no more slaves, or every cycle, where did the new slaves come from?
Good. So let's talk about slaves. Let's yeah. So let's go to the next source in a second. Just want to check the time. So okay, just to summarize Bahar, a couple points that we're now seeing of Shemitah, and I want to get like the goal of tonight, just kind of get the constellation of sources and ideas that are happening in Shemitah, because there's a lot. It's not a simple mitzvah. It's not like, you know, return a lost object, which is about returning lost objects. Shemitah is about like a whole worldview with, again, economy and farming and agriculture and animals and people and money and slavery. It's all tied up. So we're just kind of laying the groundwork here. So in Bahar, we saw God, relationship with God. Shemitah is for God. God owns the land. We're going to have some kind of tshuva, Shabbaton with God, with the land. We saw more details about how we're actually going to do the Shemitah. We saw the introduction of the Yovel concept, which is a very radical concept about returning land and about selling slaves. And now let's look at one more.
We also answered the question we had. The first one is, what are you going to eat? We have God's promise.
Yes.
That the 6th year will be so good.
Right. Don't think that it's going to be bad, right? Yeah. Don't have the bad thought in your head. What is what's the Hebrew?
One of the places says something in the Yao, it says, look at that here.
Oh, maybe that's the next one. I'm sorry.
Here they ask the question.
Oh, should you ask? Right. If you say, what am I going to eat in that year? Right? And we're not going to have stuff. I will command, there's going to be a bracha. It's all going to work out. Right? So God says, don't worry about it. For those 3 years, everything's going to be fine. So faith. Right? You got to have faith. You want to do Shemitah. If you really want to do this mitzvah, like if you're doubting, it's not going to work out. You got to really believe in the Shemitah to do it. It takes a lot of faith and trust in God, which again is, I think that's God is much more present in the Bahar version of Shemitah. It's not just about equality. It's about a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Last source, very different angle. Let's take 5 minutes to read it together now. I'll mute myself so you guys can hear each other and look at the Shmitat Ksafim.
I don't know where they got the sources.
Someone else have it on their screen?
They have it on the screen? Well, we have.
We need someone to read Shmitat Klasim from the Chumash. It should be on the screen or on the link.
I can do it.
Thank you,
Laura. Deuteronomy. Every 7th year, you shall practice the remission of debts. This shall be the nature of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the due that he claims from his fellow. He shall not dun his fellow or kinsman, for the remission proclaimed is of the Lord. You may dun the foreigner, but you must remit whatever is due you from your kinsman. There shall be no needy among you, since the Lord your God will bless you in this land. The Lord your God is giving you as a hereditary portion. If only you heed the Lord your God and take care of all this instruction that I enjoin upon you this day. For the Lord your God will bless you as he promised you. He will extend loans to many nations, but require none yourself. You will dominate many nations, but they will not dominate you. If, however, there is a needy person among you, one of your kinsmen in any of your settlements in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not harden your heart and shut your hand.
2 more minutes.
Rather, you must open your hand and lend him sufficient for whatever he needs. Beware lest you harbor the base thought. The 7th year, the year of remission, is approaching, so that you are mean to your needy kinsman and give him nothing. He will cry out to the Lord against you, and you will incur guilt. Give him readily and have no regrets when you do so, for in return the Lord your God will bless you in all your efforts and in all your undertakings, for there will never cease to be needy ones in your land, which is why you open your hand to the poor and needy kinsmen.
So there's a contradiction. Sorry.
All right. So this is what we call Shmitat Ksafim. Shemitah, by the way, means to let go. The shamet means to release, to let go. So earlier it was letting go of what? What were we kind of letting go of? What would you say? What was the release? We're releasing what? The land. And here, what are we releasing? Debts. Right? So there's a concept of Shemitah as a year of letting go in general. Just that alone, beautiful idea. It's a year to let go. We can apply that in our own lives however we want. Here, we're not talking about the land. It's not about agriculture. It's not about any of that agrarian stuff, but it is connected, because why did people get into debt in ancient times? Their crops failed, right? To buy seed, right? Animals. If I'm a farmer and this is my land, right? And I look at the ground and it's all messed up because someone put a tent over it, and I'm not going to have a good crop this year. I'm in big trouble for next year, because the way I make money is I sell my crop, and then I use the money I sell my crop to buy seeds for the next year. So I'm kind of in this cycle. I have to plant seeds, to sow them, to sell them, to plant them, right? It's like this kind of never-ending cycle. Very hard to get out of it, actually. Very trapped. And one bad year, and you're kind of ruined, because if I don't sell my crops, I don't have the money to buy the seeds for the next year. So what happens? People come along and say, oh, you need some money. I'll lend you some money. And I don't have a choice. I have to take that loan because I need the money to buy the seed so I can feed my family and get money for next year. And what would happen in those times, it would often be actually like kings or feudal, very powerful people, very wealthy people would come along and make those loans. And guess what? You think those loans were favorable or nice? No, they were very, very, 500% interest or whatever interest that people wanted, because you had to take the loan. And then if you can't pay back the loan, which they often couldn't, then what happens? Servitude. You become a slave, right? You go into slavery because you can't pay back the debt, and then you're really trapped because now you have no way of producing stuff, economics, things for yourself. You're just kind of serving this master, and people would acquire slaves this way. That was the economic system back then. Not super dissimilar to serfdom or other feudal systems that we may be familiar from middle school history. So the Torah really didn't like that, right? Because if you have this system where everyone is constantly stuck in this debt cycle and stuck into becoming slaves, the Torah, especially for the Jewish people, doesn't view slavery very positively, right? We were slaves and God took us out so we could be free, right? That's the whole thing of what Judaism is about. And I would argue not just for the whole world, like the Torah is not while it allows slavery because slavery was a part of the economic fabric of the world at the time, it's not pro-slavery. It's looking to lessen and reduce and get rid of slavery. So this is a very powerful mechanism to doing that, right? Because if you say every 7 years debts are getting canceled, you're kind of freeing people from that trap, right? That debt that I owed someone $10,000. I have no hope of ever paying it back. I'm destined for slavery. My children are destined for slavery because when I become a slave, my kids go with me. They're stuck in this cycle. This is an attempt to break that, to say we're going to have debt release every 7 years so that people don't get stuck in these eternal debt cycles.
Like opening day, we got our own losses from last year.
Right, exactly. Yes, very good.
I guess the home mortgages for no more than 6 years.
Well, yeah. So I think bankruptcy, isn't there a 7-year cycle for bankruptcies or something with a lot of, there's some, yeah, like in American law, there are vestiges of Smitta, of 7-year forgiveness cycles. I think they took from the Bible when they were writing. I don't know how much it is today, but I know initially, yeah, like what's the credit reports of 7 years? Yeah, so this idea is still kind of the idea. People should have a clean slate. You shouldn't be that. It's not great, even economically, for a country if everyone's just stuck in these cycles of debt forever and ever.
And Israel would cancel minuses sometimes in the bank accounts because the economy was just too bad. There were too many people building up debt. They just say they cancel. They would cancel minuses and check it overdrafts.
And 7 years is not such a long time either.
Yeah. What do you mean?
It's not like it's a 50-year cycle. It's not like permission on open property. 7 years is like a regular,
it's like it kind of counts on it. Right. All the lifespans, right? But you might not live till 45.
Yeah, but even still, it's not such a long
right.
time.
It's something you can look forward to and plan around.
Well, it's more about plan. Yeah, about plan.
You go to $100,000. Hey, 7 years isn't so bad.
Right. So it sounds great for the poor person who, is staring at debt and is worried and whatever. But what about the creditor, right? What about the guy who's trying to make a business and trying to feed his family by making loans, right? So we'll get into that next week. We'll talk about rabbinic approaches. And in an agricultural society where money and trading was pretty limited to these kind of things, like borrowing money for seed, not much more economic activity. But by the time of the sages of Chazal, there's a lot more economy. There's a lot more loaning and buying and selling and trading. That's not just connected to being able to buy seed. It's connected to a whole market economy system. And this is going to be a problem, right? This is going to throw some kinks in that because let's play it out for a second. What were you saying, Joe? If I'm how could you game this system potentially?
Oh, I would make a lot of really stupid decisions, do a lot of stupid things that make a lot of stupid monetary choices and say, I'll be free in 5 years.
So I don't have to worry about it, right?
Right?
There's no consequences.
You do a lot of long shots because you're right. One of them works. 500 to 1. Okay, big deal, right?
Right. 10,000 on red.
10,000, right? Right. On red free.
Right. Yes.
In the first paragraph, this is what we were just talking about. It says that if you do all these things, then the last sentence it says, God will bless you. There won't be any needy people in your land if you do all this stuff.
Right.
And then in the next paragraph, it says that there will never cease to be needy ones in your land, which is why I commanded you to open your hand for and needy things in your land. So
it's so striking, isn't it?
To us that God doesn't believe that we could keep our end of the bargain, so he doesn't, or she doesn't have to keep her end of the bargain. But then that made us think that, like, why would God give us a test that we can't pass?
Beautiful. So Joey's point there, they're pointing out this very glaring contradiction, right? This was 2 parshas ago, right? It's like not like different parts of the Torah, you know, in Bereshit is one thing, and in Devarim, they're right next to each other. There's not going to be any poor. There's always going to be poor.
Where does it say they're not going to be poor?
If you do this, right?
Sorry?
Dalet and Zion.
There'll be zero poverty, nothing, no poverty, and it's like it's not just like there probably won't. It's like zero poverty, and then there always be.
It doesn't say for how long. It just says there'll be no poverty.
Okay. Interesting.
And then it just says there'll be no poverty, but then it says there will always be poverty. So it's kind of like it doesn't say for how long.
So maybe So we're trying to resolve the contradiction. One resolution is to say what Joey said, that you could live in a world with no poverty. It's possible, but you actually can't. Meaning that world is possible if you could be who you should be, but you're not. So there's always going to be poverty. Another resolution might be sometimes there'll be no poverty, and sometimes there will. Right? Like in a Shemitah year, in a 7th year where debts are canceled and where all food is available to everybody, there's kind of probably everybody's poor, right? Everybody's like kind of just trying to feed themselves and live. It's not, poverty. There's absolute poverty and there's relative poverty. Absolute poverty meaning like I don't have enough money to feed myself. Relative poverty, I've got this and they've got this, right? And a lot of poverty we talk about in the world, especially like today, there is some absolute poverty, but a lot of poverty is relative poverty. I'm poor relative to somebody else, right? And that's like how we think about poverty. We might think of it ourselves. Oh my gosh, look at my neighbor. They've got, I'm so poor compared to them. But of course, if you're living in Skokie in 2021, you're like some of the richest people ever in the history of the world, right? Just in terms of like what we have available to us, and on every level, more food, more health, more comfortable bedding, more everything. We have more. It's like it's unbelievable. But maybe like Joe's saying, maybe there's times when you'll feel the relative poverty, a non-Shemitah year, and there's times there'll be no poverty where you live as a society. You actually will live in a way where it's like nobody's poor. We're all kind of the same. We're all in the same boat for this year. And I never thought that's a nice idea. What other things are you noticing from Shemitah Ksafim? Any other insights or questions?
I just like that sort of reality base in a second. Like you're gonna harden your heart. Don't do it. Yeah. You gotta let it go. Yeah. And be kind, because otherwise you're gonna incur guilt, and that's a bad place to be.
Yeah, and also this won't be easy. Right? It's not going to be easy to forgive a debt, right? That guy owes me $1,000, right? And he said he was going to pay me back. That's not a simple thing to just walk away and let that go.
Why would anyone give a loan if they knew that?
Because they have to.
Right. Well, so here, and so
is that God will bless you in the end.
And the loan is not made for profit. That's the other piece.
Well, only for Jews, though.
Right. So within the community, the loan is it's like charity. The loan is viewed as charity. It's not business move. It's made for charity. This connects also to interest. But you also can't loan with interest. You're not good, even without Shemitah, when you're lending within the community, you're not going to make money on the loan. You're going to lose because you're going to have the opportunity cost. But you can lend with interest beyond the community, outside the community. So there you can make a profit. So here it's really a loan is charity, but it's like 2 levels of charity. The level of charity is saying, I'll give you a loan. I won't be able to invest this $1,000 I'm giving to you, so there'll be a loss, but I'll get it back. Versus I'm giving you this $1,000 and I'm not going to get it back because the loan's going to be forgiven. There's a debate in Chazal if you can pay back the loan. Should you pay back the loan? It seems to be the answer is probably yes. Right? The forgiveness is only if you just can't pay it back. If you're able to pay it back, you should pay it back. It's a good thing. Maybe even it's a mitzvah to pay it back. But that's something we'll take a look at next week. Okay, good. So let's try to put all together. Right, so we've seen this mega mitzvah of Shemitah. We've seen a very agricultural. We're kind of rewiring the agricultural economy for 1 year. 1 year out of 7. We're knocking down the borders. We're going to see in the Mishnah in the Mishnah Gemara that literally fences come down and everyone can go everywhere. Fields, it's all open. Poor people can eat. Rich people have to kind of step back and allow for animals and people to just take. That was the first one in Shemot. Then we saw a more covenantal, spiritual, godly Shemitah. God is saying, this is for me. It's for you to reconnect with me and the land and the relationship between the Jews, the land, and God. And yes, it includes the justice piece of, helping people out, all that stuff. But really, it's about our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And then the final one was this economic piece about resetting the economic table, not just that everyone can eat whatever they want, but really helping people get out of the debt traps that have been very perilous and lead to slavery. We want to stop that every 7 years. So all these are part of the mitzvah of Shemitah. As I said, it's so big. Like in each one of these, we could spend 10 sessions like thinking about what it means and how to apply it. What we'll do next time is see how Chazal tried to apply some of these very lofty concepts and some of the problems they ran into that we've already started to talk about. You say you should cancel debts, but why would everyone give a loan? You say everyone can, no one can work a field, but how are they going to feed each other? How is there going to be a food system if there's no working in the land? So the Torah has a lot of big ideas, and then the job of Chazal, and ultimately us, is to take those big ideas and try to make them real, actualize them, not just have like a cool idea, but say like, this is how we're going to make it work in the world, and we're going to deal with all the problems that come up. And we'll see some of the really interesting and creative and beautiful ways they did that next Sunday night. Thanks, everybody. Yesher Koach. And thanks everyone for joining. I did my best. If you have any feedback how I could do it better, please feel free to share. And if you're comfortable coming, I encourage you to come. It's nice in the tent. The weather's great. And but of course, everyone's welcome online as well. Take care and see you soon. And Tuesday we're back for our Tuesday afternoon Tanakh class. We're going to be looking at Chana's prayer. That's Tuesdays at 2. We'll do that also on Zoom and in the tent as well. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Rabbi, maybe next time you want to call in.